As we stay with the election matters, previous elections have seen more women registered to vote, and this year's election is no different. Compared to men, about 3 million more women are expected to vote this year, with a 55% representation of registered voters. However, women only make up 42% of all those seeking elected office. But it's not only about the voters, the participation of women in politics as well. While it has changed over the years, some researchers say there's a lot that still needs to be done to address some of the barriers to entry. Let's speak to Phinah Kodisang, Soul City Institute CEO, as well as advocate Brenda Madumise-Panjibo, WISE for Afrika Director. Let me thank you both for your time this evening. I'll start with you, Advocate Madumise. How well thought out would you say some election promises that were made by political parties in their manifestos when addressing some issues around gender and specifically facing women?
I'm really struggling to hear you. So if the question is whether their manifestos are well thought out when it comes to gender equality and equity, they are not well thought out. So if you look at, if you're going to diagnose the problem of South Africa like the EFF manifesto does, is that in your analysis of the situation analysis of this country, you have to center women and women's experiences in your analysis. And so they missed all of that. They are able to diagnose the problem of South Africa, but miss the substantive gender equality and equity that we're talking about. Same as the ANC manifesto. It talks about we are going to promote gender equality, but without really giving a diagnosis of why is it that we have these disparities, these inequalities in women, and in their intersectionality, and you have not bring intersectionality into the fore. So they're all lacking in all of that. And what it means to me is that they don't take the issues of women, gender, and gender equality and equity and addressing inequality, and I'm talking about substantive inequality. They're not taking it seriously.
Advocate Madumise, I hope it's a better line and you can hear me now. So in light of what you're just saying as well, I mean, around the issue of diagnosis, then how do they even begin to address the problem if they haven't even diagnosed it properly?
So they're not going to address it. What it tells you is that they're not going to address the problem. So we are going to do what we've been doing for the last 30 years in starting and stopping, and hoping that at some point the septic wound that we find will sort itself out, and we'll clean it maybe once a week, and take out the bandage and put it back, instead of literally taking out the bandage and cleaning it fully. So that's what's going to happen, because you have not, in your preamble or even in your diagnosis, as I said earlier, you have not done that. So it's going to be another challenge, another struggle for South African women to keep on reminding the decision makers of this country that you need to center women in your planning, in your policy development, in your policy formulation, in your policy execution, in all of that. We still have to continue to remind them.
Phinah, 30 years on, if women are still then needing to remind those who are hoping to speak to them about the issues that they're faced with, then what does it tell us about how seriously these issues are being taken then?
I think Advocate Madumise, hit the nail on the head when she says they are not taking it serious. We are just seeing the rhetoric of everyday politics that just continues to, look at everything else except issues faced by women. And I found it very interesting because for us as Soul City Institute, the issue of gender-based violence is very key. It's what we were looking for when we were going through the different manifestos. And we find that, in fact, it's not put out clear in each manifesto. It's clustered under crime, and it's addressed as if it's just one crime, that can be dealt with through training police and through making sure that community policing forums are active. Yet we know that it is declared a pandemic. So how do you deal with a pandemic? COVID showed us how a pandemic is dealt with, but we don't see the same commitment. We don't see the political will to actually drill down to the issues, the many other intersecting issues that lead to gender-based violence. And as a pandemic, I think it's not taken serious. And I saw that even President Beki acknowledges that it needs to be on the agenda as he's calling for a debate to happen post-elections. So we cannot wait. I think one day lost, it's a life of a woman that is lost, because the more we are not addressing the issue, the more women are going to die.
Phinah, there's something that, interests me about the work that you did as Soul City as well when it comes to this very issue, and you reaching out to different political parties when it comes to this particular issue. What were your impressions?
We were not impressed, I must say, in that, you have to drill down and dig deep in what they are saying for you to actually find what is it that they are proposing or committing to do in terms of fighting the scourge of gender-based violence. We, like you mentioned earlier, or it was Advocate Brenda, they each point out who's not doing what, but they are not able to say, this is what we are committing to do. They will come and tell you government is not doing this, this one is not doing that. But when you now say, okay, tell us what you are going to do, because the campaign was called, why should we vote for you? Why vote for you as this particular political party? What is your promise and your commitment to us as women? And they are failing seriously.
Advocate Madumise, then if we are now, still hearing about the importance of a debate post the elections about this particular issue, we've seen summits, we've seen conversations about gender-based violence. Is it still time for a debate?
No, I think we've passed the stage of debate around gender equality and equity in this country. We've passed the stage of debate around gender violence in this country. What we require is a state, is a government, is a leadership that is decisive enough to tackle what women have raised in the different summits that we have had. That the state and the government of today is sitting with a national strategic plan that gives them the roadmap on how to tackle gender violence in this country. And they have failed to do that. So anyone who's thinking of a debate post-elections, they're dreaming, because that's not going to happen. What we expect from this government is that they're going to hit they're not going to excuses an explanation of why things cannot happen. What we want to see on the 30th of June, on the 1st of July, 2nd of July, is a budget dedicated solely on addressing gender equality and gender inequality and equity in this country, gender violence in this country, and that's about it. We are not going to negotiate on that.
And Phinah, one of the things is that it's not only about the messaging, but it's also the participation of women in politics as well. That is also key. And I wonder, in your view, when you look at how the country has, moved 30 years on, what would you say right now in 2024 are some of the barriers for women to participate meaningfully in politics? And has the picture changed over time, in your view?
We live in a very patriarchal society that we must acknowledge. And patriarchy finds it's also manifesting in the politics, So women are there as a tick box. We put them in positions that cannot shift a lot of things, and that is the sad thing. Why do we still not have a woman president, a deputy president as a woman? What is stopping us when we are the majority in this country? Why is it 30 years later we are still putting men ahead? What is it that we are not able to deliver as women? And I think it's politics that also speaks to how women are made to doubt their own capability, because men come in, make the decisions, and they own these power positions. It's always about power. And if power is not shifting, I don't think we are going to do anything. We have not really been able to shift power in this country. So,
Advocate Madumise, in light of that then, are there clear paths that are also being carved by different political parties when women are in positions to say, we are going to have a deliberate path here to be able to level the playing field, but also make sure that women are participating meaningfully in the political arena?
So you'll see in the different manifestos, and we looking at the manifestos of the parties that contested national elections before. So if you hear me talk ANC, EFF, UDM, DAs, because what we have looked at is all those parties. Is there's mention of women in almost all these manifestos. There's mention of gender as a word. There's mention of women as a word. You then have those that go into specifics. For instance, that they will talk about women's gender and women's representation, 50% representation across all sectors. That's commendable. But it's what is going to be done to ensure that 50% that you're going to be placing in the different sectors of the country, economy, and everywhere else, that they are not put there because it's a window dressing or it is a tick box exercise. And that's why we talk of substantive equality, because it can't be that it's only women who are supposed to raise issues of inequality and equity. It's that we all need to understand that you have both genders having a stake in creating opportunities for all the genders, and that we all must feel safe wherever we are. So it not be a women's problem. It is a societal problem. It's an issue that must be tackled by the entire society and country on how we address inequality and ensure that meaningful representation is seen across all boards, so that our children can visualize themselves, seeing themselves in others, in all of us, that they can also lead. And that's what we talk about, substantive.
And Advocate Madumise, even to add to that, they don't find themselves sitting in the same table with their male counterparts and still fighting to get the same salary for the same work that they are doing.
Exactly. Absolutely. And so if you are advocating for a change of an airport, you have to change the name of the airport, and we have not looked at they pay equity in the first place. Why is it that you still, till today, women who do the same jobs as men are paid less, right? And you've seen the insane salaries that are being put out into the public domain of CEOs of MTNs, of the mines, and everywhere else. And if you look at the workers themselves, what they are earning, it's a pittance in comparison, and it pales in comparison. So we have to be humane in our approach on how we want to amass wealth and good things for ourselves and not for others, and we want to perpetuate this poverty, want to perpetuate this inequality when we have the opportunity to level the playing field and be compassionate about your fellow citizen, about your fellow human beings, to make sure that they live a better life. There is no way that we can continue to celebrate and talk about the face of poverty being a black woman. It's not an achievement. It's not. We cannot continue to be saying those things. We cannot continue talking about the highest unemployment in this country being young people and being women. It's not an achievement. It has to be done away with. And the sooner we do it, the better. And this 29th of May has to be a catalyst and a change that is coming for many people to have their lives better.
Phinah, is it then an issue of simply just, going back to the earlier point that we're talking about not diagnosing the problem, not even diagnosing it correctly to begin with? Does it speak to the fact that women are not being spoken to, possibly, when some of these promises are being crafted or some of these policies are being crafted, and thus not being able to hear the voice that should matter and be able to tell you exactly what you should do in order to be able to deal with some of their issues?
One thing that we know is that women of this country do have a voice, and they do, make their voice heard. But there's a lot of gatekeeping when it comes to the voices of women being put out there, amplified to the point where it makes a difference. And Brenda is right in saying, it's something that must be dealt away with. We talk about this thing year in, year out. Every 5 years when there are elections, we say, where are women? Why are women not coming to the fore? Women are there. Women have all the power. Women are ready to lead, but there's a gatekeeping. They are not allowed. Spaces are closed on them. And we use the ticket of political parties to close women off. So I think it's high time, if we take women seriously in this country, that we show it. And the 29th becomes that platform where women themselves must go in there and make a feminist vote. Vote with your power and shift the narrative.
And, you talk about, even that issue. I was even going through the current state of gender parity in politics in South Africa report by the Gender Commission, which was released in August last year. It says even from a gender representation and equality perspective, the overall outcome of the 2019 general elections at the provincial level was positive, as there was an increase in the total number of women elected, representatives compared to the 2014 elections. But then you're still sitting here and we're still saying, but while they are there, they are still not able to participate meaningfully. So how do we begin, Phinah, to break down these barriers, to break down some of these, gatekeeping efforts to try and keep women out in order to ensure that come the next election, we're not having a conversation like this one?
Women must not participate in patriarchal, showcasing. Because showcasing is when women are put as a face of a campaign, women are put out there, but in reality, they have no voice, they have no power. Women must stand firm. We could actually be a movement as a woman of this country to say we are dealing away, we are dismantling these patriarchal norms, patriarchal systems that keep us, at the back foot. But I don't think as women, we have really unified in putting that one voice out there to say we are not going to stand by and just be what others call patriarchal princesses, people who are keeping the system intact and being used by the very same oppressive system to oppress ourselves and to oppress others. So it's a high time women took themselves seriously and fought the system like we did when we did the total shutdown. It was a demonstration of the power that is women, and I think women should go back to that.
You agree, Advocate Madumise?
Oh, yeah, and I think, so let's just take an example. So we agree that we have had many women coming into the political space and in decision making in the legislature, in parliament, and all of that. But what has that done for us? Has it drastically changed the material conditions of the many women, especially black women in this country? No, it hasn't. So why is that the case? So if we understand that we are operating in a patriarchal political system, that you even if you want to sponsor a particular piece of legislation that is going to advance the cause of women, you are not going to be able to do so if you have not spoken to your male counterpart who leads a party, who must determine whether that agenda item should be put on the agenda in the first place. So that's the challenge that we face, right? It's across the board. You are not going to get women in this political party standing up and saying, we are now putting a bill forward for equal pay. Because that's not what the agenda, and if you look at the manifestos, that's not priority for all these political parties at the moment, right? So why should women in those political parties stand out and decide that they're going to put a equal pay parity bill on the agenda of a parliament process? So this is what we talk about when we talk substantive, because if you had put the diagnosis at the beginning, at the center of your analysis of what's wrong in this country and what has worked, has not worked in this country, you would have been able, and I'm certain that you would have put that analysis of women and black women in this country at the center of your analysis and your diagnosis, and most of them have failed to do so, because that would have assisted you as a political party to be able to come up with the interventions that I'm talking about now.
And Phinah, even, for the mere fact that right now as we speak, we know how, difficult things were for women in particular during the COVID-19 pandemic, for example. And right now with the rising cost of living as well, they are in the coal face of all of this as well. And for the fact that there isn't even, an effort to address that at that level as well by even some who would be at the forefront of the fight in some of these legislatures and different political platforms is also quite an issue in itself.
It is. And there is an appreciation of how job creation, stands top of the agenda in these manifestos. But it's not also to the point where you say we acknowledge that women are the most unemployed. Where they are employed, they earn the least, in comparison to men when you talk about parity. So it's important that even when we put these agenda items, in the front and we say, yes, we are going to create jobs, the same energy that we are saying we are going to make sure everyone has a job, we then say, but we are going to create equitable jobs because we don't want women to remain behind. You know, we want women who do a lot of care work that is unpaid to also be provided with the remuneration that makes their socioeconomic status better from what it is, because then we still entrench poverty. And as Ms. Brenda says, it's black, you know, it's a young woman, it's also rural women. And so we are not changing anything because we are just saying we are just going to create these many jobs. But who's going to get those jobs? How are we going to ensure that we bring women on par with their male counterparts who keep growing ahead, you know, in terms of their lifestyles, their socioeconomic status, and also not being able to close the gap where some of the homes, if not 60, I think it's 70% of the homes are still led by women.
And of course, the leveling of the playing fields, Phinah, is a conversation that we still need to have. But then let me thank you both for your time. Do appreciate it. That was Phinah Kodisang, Seoul City Institute CEO, as well as Advocate Brenda Madumise-Panjibo, was for Afrika Director.